really grateful for the opportunity just to have the luxury of studying with you instead of doing our emergency care. And so the blessing is a good reminder that sometimes we take this stuff for granted. We take the opportunity just to sit and learn for an hour for granted. And so here's the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshenu v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to engage in Torah study. And today I'm feeling that more poignantly than ever because it is truly a luxury and high on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, to stimulate and educate and grow and intensify our lives and our daily lives. And that's really what Judaism and this course is about. It's about how to use Judaism to enhance, improve, elevate our daily lives. So one of the ways we do that is the subject of our class today, which is through the Jewish holidays. Right? So sometimes we think about Jewish holidays as stuff on the calendar that we have to do, or even opportunities to get together as families and extended families, which is a beautiful thing. But there's many layers to how to experience the Jewish holidays. And so we're going to try to get to a little bit of the depth today. First, understand what the system, what the structure of Jewish holiday calendar year is, and try to create categories and some understanding of how to approach the Jewish holidays in the calendar year. And then specifically about Purim, that's coming up tomorrow night and Friday. And so that's a good way for us to run this experiment through to see if we can intensify and elevate our practice of the Purim holiday. So let's get started. I'll start sharing screen where there's a few of us in class. So that's a good thing that we can ask questions, and if something comes up that tickles your fancy or is confusing, please let me know and we can go a little more in depth. So here's a circle, a calendar year of the Jewish holidays. Here, I'll share a different screen. That might be a little easier. There we go. How's that? Can everybody see that? Bigger? All right, so here we go. So here, I think I can make it bigger. Someone help me. How do I zoom in there? Is that good enough, or should I zoom in? Good enough. All right, so here we go. So here's our wheel of calendar. What's complicated about this? No, number one, we have our secular calendar that goes around from January to December, and then we have our Jewish calendar of different months and different days. And so the months of the year are represented there. Maybe we'll start with Rosh Hashanah as Tishrei, if we can take a look at that. So that's usually falls out in the September, October range. See, there's a range of where the holiday falls. And then we'll go around the wheel for a second. We have Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev is Hanukkah, Tevet, Shvat, Tu B'Shvat, there's Purim. That's where we are now, right there, Purim. Pesach is coming up. And Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaTzmaut, Lag BaOmer are kind of minor holidays. I'm going through this very quickly because we're going to unpack it in a moment. This is Shavuot, Tisha B'Av, right? And that's, you know, the major Jewish holidays, and there are lots in between. So Rabbi Kushner gives us a little bit of insight into how to approach these holidays. How does one keep alive that incredible feeling of encountering God at Sinai and feeling more human, more significant than you ever did before? Right, so there's a moment at Sinai, a moment of revelation in which we experienced God full on, right? Full force God. And our eyes were opened to a greater reality than ever before. All the mystery of the universe opened up before us, and there was an incredible revelation in that moment. And so the question is, how do we recreate that moment? How do we feel God in our lives? One of the ways the Torah offers us is the setting aside of special days when ordinary concerns are transcended so that our souls are free to concentrate on the eternal. Even as married couples clear a day to mark their wedding anniversary, to recapture the way they felt about each other and what they promised each other on their wedding day, with a concentration that their busy lives otherwise don't afford them, right? So we know this from birthdays, anniversaries, right? When things come up, when the season arrives where something significant happened, there's a natural inclination to commemorate and to celebrate. And we don't want to forget about the important things in life, like the day we were married or the day we were born. And so we mark it, right, to recreate some of that gratitude and to recommit ourselves. The same is true with the Jewish holidays. The Jewish holidays are part of our relationship with the divine. The Jewish holidays are part of the relationship with the cosmos. How do we feel God's presence in our lives? This is one of those ways, right? One of the ways is by offering blessings. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to sit and learn, right? Another way is to experience the Jewish holidays that come around every year. And they do two things. One is they mark certain historical events of significance, like Revelation, like the Exodus, right? Like the wanderings through the desert, right? They mark these historical events to remind us of the connection that we had with God, to remind us of the elevation that we felt in that moment, and we celebrate their anniversary when the time comes around. And there's another way, well, that we'll get to in just a moment. Here we go. So let me go to a different. Stop share. One moment. There we go. Festivals act as lodging for travelers making their way through the year. These festival inns are special accommodations, not solely for rest or retreat from the world, but also places to halt and take our bearings to make sure we are traveling and not going around in circles, right? So there's a common conception of time, which is that it goes kind of around in circles, right? And that the wheel of time goes around. And the same is true for, in many religions, right? We are fated to F-A-T-E-D, right? We believe in fate and determination, that, you know, life is circular and cyclical and circular, right? But in Judaism, we believe that life is linear, right? There's a beginning point, there's creation in our history, and then we had revelation at Sinai, and then, right, the Exodus, and diaspora, right, and bring us to where we are. And one day the Messiah will come, right? This is linear, right, across the timeline. And we also go around the seasons, right? And so it's almost like a slinky, right? I guess there's probably a better technical name for that. But it goes around and travels through time. And what we want to avoid, right, in Judaism is going round and round like a merry-go-round, right? That's not what we're after. What we're after is re-experiencing these events every year and deepening and elevating and growing and striving and yearning and moving and journeying in a direction. And so we use these vehicles, these stops along the way, right, to enhance our lives and experience. So the Jewish, right, so Yitz Greenberg, sacred days give sustenance to spiritual life and a dimension of depth to physical life. The holidays provide a record of the struggle to be faithful to the covenant. While chronicling history, they distill the lessons learned along the way. And because they are popular, the holidays make the dream and the process of its realization, the possession of the entire people. So one great example is Passover, right? Passover has really captured the hearts of the Jewish people in a major way, both in America and Israel and all over the world. It's probably the most celebrated, decorated Jewish experience of the entire year is the Passover Seder. And it's no wonder that Jews for a long time have been very invested in freedom and freedom marches and civil rights movements, right? And have been taught and have integrated all these lessons of the Exodus and freedom and individual rights and democracy, right, through that Passover Seder experience, right? And so we know that it works. And so let's deal with all the different kinds of holidays. Not all holidays are the same. One way to understand the holidays is to unpack them into different categories. And so here are the different categories of Jewish holidays. The first one is the 3 festivals, right? And so there are 3 festivals in the Jewish calendar that were pilgrimage holidays, which means that they were associated with a certain harvest time, and the Israelites would bring their harvest as offerings of gratitude to the temple. And so literally they would pick up and make pilgrimage to the Holy Temple from all around Israel. And so the 3 pilgrimage festivals are Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Here they are, right? Those are the 3 pilgrimage festivals called the Shalosh Regalim in Hebrew, and they tell a narrative, right? And the narrative is on Passover, right? We get out of Egypt, right? And then on Shavuot, we arrive at Mount Sinai and receive the 10 Commandments. And then on Sukkot, we wander through the desert. So that's our foundational narrative built into these 3 pilgrimage festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Right, they're a unit, Shalosh Regalim, and they're connected, right? So Pesach is connected to Shavuot because we count the days of the Omer, right? And all of them are in this category of 3 festivals. Right? And then the next category are Shabbat and the high holidays. Why are they in the same category? Because they're really holidays of reflection, moments of pause and reflection. Weekly, we have the pause and reflection of Shabbat. And then annually, we have Shabbat Shabbaton on Yom Kippur, right? The Shabbat, the Sabbath of all Sabbaths, is called Yom Kippur. And so that's what we do, right? We stop. And next class, we're going to intensely deep dive into Shabbat and its celebration and how we use Shabbat effectively. That will just mention a few things here. That Shabbat and high holidays, one of the amazing things, gifts of Shabbat, well, 2 things. One, most units and measures of time are connected to astronomy, right? So for example, a day, right, is the revolution of the Earth. A month is, right, the trip of the moon around the Earth. Do I have that right? And then a year is the journey of the, right, so of the Earth around the sun. What's a week? It's a trick question. You know, what's a week in astronomical reality? Nothing, right? There's no 7 days in the cosmos. There's no such unit that comes naturally. So where does it come from? The Bible. It comes from religion, comes from God, comes from someone figured out that we just can't keep, right? We just can't keep working and working and working and working. At some point, it's gonna not work. It's gonna, we're gonna tire out and we're gonna drop dead. So we need to figure out, right, how to take a break. And so there was no natural way to do that. And so we had to create that, right? And so that's the Bible's purpose of the 7 days of creation, right? One of the purposes is to help us understand that we need to impose order on this crazy thing called life. And one of the ways we do that is by dividing it up into units of 7. 6 days a week we work. On the 7th day we rest, right? So Stephen Covey great manager of effective living, talks about sharpening the saw, right? If you're outside
Question.
cutting a tree, yeah, please.
Does Judaism have the opinion that the Bible and the Torah comes straight from God? Like you talk about, the 7 days coming that you talked about astrologically that, it comes from the Bible. And so but there's different interpretations, whether it's Judaism or Christianity, that the Bible or Torah or Quran or whatever, that it was written by man. And
Right.
then, so I'm just curious, does Judaism believe that the Bible, the Torah, sorry, in this case, is strictly coming from God?
Good question. Yeah. So the way I framed it, I think what triggered the question is I framed it as a good idea, right?
Right.
That we needed to come up with that humanity needed this idea. And so the question is, did we come up with it ourselves or did God give it to us, right? And my answer is a combination, right? That it took Moses to climb up the mountain in the Torah, right? The narrative is it took Moses to climb up the mountain in order to receive the Torah. It just wasn't dropped on us, right? It was yearned for, right? It was desired, and it was created in relationship. It was created with Moses. It was created with the Israelites. And so for me, it's a combination. There was a giver and a receiver, right? And both are essential in that equation. So the receiver is Moses and us. Who is that giver? That's the answer. That's the million-dollar question. God is the giver of the Torah. And so liberal understanding of God is the force that animates the cosmos, that keeps everything alive, right? And a more conservative with a small c approach to God is, God as a being delivered it to us. And of course, as conservative Jews, we're somewhere in the middle, right? That it both was that there's a godly spark within all of us that we can access and is real, right? And exists and can be felt. And so that's a short answer to a very, it's a better question than an answer, but my answer is both, that there's a giver and a receiver to the Torah. Yeah. Rosh Hashanah and Yom, great. So on the seventh day we rest. Stephen Covey says if we keep sawing and sawing and sawing, at some point the blade is going to get dull and we're going to be ineffective. Right? We need to take time out in order to refresh. And what's the most important thing to do on Shabbat? Well, the word Shabbat explains it all. The word Shabbat literally means to stop. So in Hebrew, in Israel, in contemporary Israeli language, when workers go on strike, it's called a shvita. It's called a stoppage, a work stoppage. And so that's what it is. You walk out of the plant and you say, no, thank you. Right? Today's the day for me and for God and community, and to remind myself that I'm actually a human being and not a tool in an industry. Right? And so that's the spirit of Shabbat, is a revolution against the 24/7 dehumanization of the economic reality in which we live. And a celebration of humanity and holiness, and reminding ourselves what's important in life and our priorities. Right. So that's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are in their own. Right, Shabbat and the high holidays are in their own category of themselves. So first we had Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, which are Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And then we've got these reflective holidays, which are Shabbat and high holidays. And then we have a third category, holidays of history. When an important historical event happens, we want to integrate it into our consciousness and into our present day practice. One example of that is Hanukkah and Purim, Tisha B'Av, and then more recently, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaAtzmaut. Right? So Hanukkah and Purim are both stories of when enemies of the Jewish people wanted to destroy us in a variety of ways. And we survive right? They're sort of commemorations of resilience and survival. Let's keep going. And then Tisha B'Av is a commemoration of destruction of the temples. And then finally, we have the three at the bottom, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaAtzmaut. Yom HaShoah is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Yom HaZikaron is Memorial Day in Israel. And Yom HaAtzmaut is Israel Independence Day. Right? And so we have all these different, it's the third category that we're learning about, holidays of history. So to review, the Shalosh Regalim, the three pilgrimage festivals, and then we have these reflective holidays, and then finally holidays of history. Yes, Charles? Unmute.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Is Shabbat really considered the top holidays of all? And I don't want to make any, but like in religious terms, that Shabbat is really the most important holiday that we have.
That's right, yeah. So the question is asked, we put all this time and energy into Pesach, we put all this time and energy into Rosh Hashanah and the high holidays, and it's a common theme that you hear that really, in the end, Shabbat is the one that we should be putting the most energy into. So is it really the most important holiday? I would say absolutely yes. Number one, I think because of its frequency. In Judaism, there's a principle. If you have something that's frequent and something that's infrequent, the one that's frequent takes priority, right? And it's a principle in halakha that when, like you have in Jewish law, if two things sort of conflict or if just, the question is which one takes priority, which one do you do first? So for example, the best example is talit and tefillin, right? And so in the mornings when we pray, we put on a talit, a prayer shawl, and we also put on tefillin, phylacteries. And we put on talit 7 mornings a week. And we put on the tefillin 6 mornings a week because we don't put them on Shabbat. And so the question gets asked in Jewish law and Jewish ritual, which one do we put on first in the morning? The prayer shawl or the phylacteries? And the answer is the prayer shawl. Why? Because we do it more often. And things that we do more often are more important and more beloved and take precedence. And so I would say the same is true for Shabbat. Right? Shabbat is the more frequent holiday and therefore the most beloved and should take the most priority and precedence. Right? So I sometimes give the example, if you have a steady date with a friend, a lunch date on every Wednesday with a friend, and then someone comes in from out of town, wouldn't you know it, they're here for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The question is, should you cancel your Wednesday lunch with your friend, or it's something special, or keep their date, with regularity. Jewish ethics and wisdom would say keep that regular date. That the most important friendships are the one that are the most common and frequent. And that kind of makes sense to me, right? As wisdom and guidance, not only for legal purposes, but also for spiritual guidance. That don't overlook the things that are most regular in your life, that give you the most comfort. And so Shabbat is one of those things, right? If you're going to focus on one holiday, focus on Shabbat because it's your best friend, right? It's the one that's closest to us and comes around most often and has the most potential to transform our lives. So there you go. Shabbat here, the greatest of Jewish spiritual institutions, an entire day each week dedicated to rest, relationship, and gratitude for life's blessings, a reminder of God's rest from creation and our exodus from Egypt. Right? So next week we'll talk about that. There's a confusing relationship. Right? Which one does it really commemorate? Does it commemorate the 7th day and God rests, or the exodus from Egypt, or both? Right? And it happens year round, as you can see. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, right? Sukkot is our fall festival. And then Simchat Torah, we didn't mention yet, but there's a lot of holidays here that I'll let you look at on your own and study up with some of the recommended reading at the end and even using these chapters. So let's look at some of these holidays a little bit more in depth and sort of get a taste for how to use them, how to implement them, what their purpose is, and what we can do for Purim that's starting soon. So we'll go through Sukkot and Shavuot quickly, and then we'll focus a little more time on Purim. All right, Sukkot, right? So Sukkot is our fall harvest festival. And so again, it commemorates two things. There's an agricultural connection, and then there's a historical connection. The agricultural connection was back in the day in the Pilgrimage Festival, it was a time to bring our harvest. I forget which harvest it was. Ken Levine knows all these by heart. Some of the barley harvests, and some are the wheat harvests, and some are the other harvests, right? But this was one of the harvests that came in the fall. It was a time of great joy and gathering. And so people would come to Jerusalem and they needed lodging and they stayed in huts and, so there's a historical evolution to how the holiday got evolved, its origins and evolution. But it harkens back to the time that we were wandering in the desert, right? In Sukkot, we were wandering the desert, and each night before we went to bed, we had to go into our sukkah, right, in the desert. And so when we go into our Sukkot today, we are transported through time back to the desert, a time when we were relying on God for protection. We are vulnerable to the elements, and it reminds us about our vulnerability and life's fragility, and it gets us out in nature, right? And that's the spirit of the Sukkot festival, right? And so we need that more than ever these days because we are so protected, right? We control everything. We control the temperature, we control right, our cars, we control our computers, right? We control lots and lots of different things. And sometimes that can be misleading, right? And we can slip into that delusion that we really are in control. Guess what, folks? We're in control of a great many things, but unfortunately there are a great many important things that are out of our control, right? Life and death, right, is out of our control. What happens in the markets, right, is out of our control, right? There are things that we can control and things that we can't control. We can't control the people around us as much as we'd like to sometimes, right? We have to allow people their own self-determination. And so we need to let go of control every once in a while. And one of the ways that we can experiment with that and exercise that freedom and vulnerability is to step out into the sukkah on Sukkot. Right? And so that's our commandment on Sukkot, is to live in the sukkah. We want to get out of our houses that are filled with all of our comforts and into the sukkah, which is a flimsy place, a temporary structure that we can see the stars, that we are open to the universe and in relationship with God in a different way that we usually are, with God and the elements, right? The God of nature. And so here we go. We build a sukkah. The most notable way that this holiday is celebrated is by constructing and spending time in a sukkah, a temporary booth-like structure that has an open roof constructed from natural materials like palm fronds or bamboo mats. Remember, it's all natural, which is an important part of this festival to connect us with the earth. Sukkot are often decorated with fruits and other symbols of the harvest. So they still have that harvest joyous feeling that brings us back through our history. And it's traditional to eat all meals in the sukkah, and when possible, to sleep in the sukkah as well. And then we have all these kinds of other rituals with the lulav and etrog that harken back to our agricultural past and our festivals. But the most important part is that sukkah that reminds us of our vulnerability and fragility. And so that's one of the ways we can use the sukkah energy in our lives, both connecting with nature and reminding ourselves of our vulnerability. And ultimately, we can improve our lives if we understand that we're not in control of everything that happens to us, that there's a certain element in life of surprise and vulnerability and loss of control and submission to the greater cosmos. And right, Sukkot can help us get there. Shavuot, right, is a holiday that comes at the end of the summer. So it's a celebration of the summer harvest. Whatever was grown and harvested in the summer gets celebrated for Shavuot. And I think they brought, so here we go. How we celebrate. So again, there's two components. One is an agricultural component of the harvest, and the second is the historical component of receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. And so that's the one that really gets expressed most poignantly these days, is the connection to Mount Sinai and the Torah. Not because we lost touch with our agricultural history, except in Israel. In Israel, Shavuot is celebrated with baskets of fruit and greenery in an important and meaningful way. But for us in the diaspora, we've kind of lost that agricultural connection, and we focus on learning Torah on Shavuot. And so Tikkun Leil Shavuot, it's traditional. Let's read it. Shavuot began as a celebration of the summer harvest and came to also represent the establishment of the covenant between God and Israel at Mount Sinai through the giving of the Torah. Shavuot occurs 7 weeks after Pesach on the 6th day of the Hebrew month of Sivan, usually late May or early June. And we study the Torah at the Tikkun Leil Shavuot that we'll have once again this year. Tradition to stay up for much or all of the night on Shavuot. Our program goes to about midnight, but other synagogues in town go all through the night, symbolically reenacting the experience of revelation at Sinai. And so when we start to reflect on how we can experience these holidays in our everyday life, reenactment is an important part of that experience. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we read a special book called the Book of Ruth. So Purim is the holiday that's coming up now. And let's sort of see if we can understand a little bit about the holiday of Purim. I spoke a little bit about it on Shabbat morning. I think it's going to be an important Purim this year of all years. Let's take a look at it. So it's the Jewish Carnival, right? So I don't know all that much about Carnival in Rio de Janeiro and Brazil, but maybe you can help, someone can help me out. And then also the other Carnival interface we have here in Texas is like New Orleans Mardi Gras, right, as a Carnival, right? And I was never in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, but I was in New Orleans once or twice, and the first time I went just to experience the city, and I was surprised to hear how deeply meaningful Mardi Gras was for the residents of New Orleans. I knew it was kind of a party scene, right, for the rest of the United States, but there are people who moved to New Orleans and live in New Orleans because they were so enthralled by Mardi Gras. So what's so enthralling and amazing about Mardi Gras? I think one of it is the tradition of the costumes and the rituals and the traditions and the feeling and the joy. But there's also, it's a revolution against commonplace, right? It's a revolution against boredom. It's a revolution against convention, right? It's a topsy-turvy.
It's a cesspool.
It's a cesspool. It also gets kind of crazy. Is that what you mean? Yes. Yeah. So we have to, yeah, right. I guess we're talking about in its ideal, right? In its ideal, it's a celebration of the underworld that bubbles beneath the surface all the time. And we let it out. We let the bird out of the cage for one day to fly and to run around. And then we put it back in the cage for another year. Right, and but we seem to need societies, right? Humanity seems to need that escape every once in a while to let loose, right, and let the truth fly. And that's sort of different cultures have different ways of doing that. Does anybody have any insight beyond that into the meaning of Mardi Gras or Carnival? All right, let's go with that. So Purim is our way of doing that. So all year long, we are buttoned up and, polite and careful. And one day a year, we're encouraged to let go of that, right? And one of the ways we do that is through a mask, and how ironic that is, right? We actually cover up in order to let go, right? When we cover up, all of a sudden there's anonymity that allows us to express our wild sides. And then, but also, right, we feel like we're a different person when we put on a mask. A mask is an identity, right? So we put on a mask and we sort of try on a different identity and party, right? That's the idea for Purim. Here's the celebration. On a holiday, Jews should eat meat and drink wine, for there is no real rejoicing without meat to eat and wine to drink. And if you're vegetarian, you know, there are ways to accommodate, but we should have a nice meal, and we should sit down, and we should feel good, and we should eat, and we should drink. And while one eats and drinks, it is also a duty to feed the stranger, the orphan, the widow, and other poor people. So there's one mitzvah, which is to have a Purim Seudah, to have a Purim festive meal. Another really important mitzvah on Purim is to matanot levunim, is to give gifts to poor people and gifts to each other, mishloach manot. One who locks the doors to their courtyard and eats and drinks with their spouse and family without giving anything to eat and drink to the poor, that meal is not a celebration of a divine commandment, but only a celebration in one's own belly, right? We have to make sure that even though, right, our carnival looks a lot like other carnivals and Mardi Gras experiences, we always have to remember that it's somehow different. Well, I don't know Carnival and Mardi Gras all that well. Hopefully there is some underpinning of loving kindness and charity, but we see it right here from Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, that not only should we experience joy ourselves, but we have to remember that in our own joy, our joy is not complete until all the people around us are also joyfully rejoicing. Just for us to be rejoicing is not okay. It is of such people that the Bible says, their sacrifices shall be for them as the bread of morning. All that eat from it shall be polluted, for their bread is for their own appetite. Right? If we only care about ourselves on Purim, then that's not going to work. That's not a celebration of a Jewish festival at all. And so while we're enjoying ourselves, we are commanded to remember that other people need to be rejoicing and have their bellies full along with us. And so there's a well-known practice to drink on Purim. And I think we can figure out why. And number one is the joy that we want to express. But number two is this wildness that alcohol seems to encourage, right? And the tradition teaches nichnas yain yotze emet. Wine comes in, truth comes out, right? It's almost like a truth serum sometimes, right? Where you're spilling all your problems to the bartender, right? Right? All of the alcohol has a way of summoning up, right, deep feelings and allows us to express them a little bit easier. But it comes with a warning. We all know, right? There's a warning label on the liquor itself, right? And there's a warning in the Talmud here that too much of a good thing is also not so good. So here's the story, the warning story from our tradition. Rava taught, one of our rabbis taught, this is from the Talmud, the rabbi said, on Purim, one must drink until they cannot distinguish between cursed be Haman and blessed be Mordechai. Right? We really want the world to be topsy-turvy so that good and evil and morality are just like gone for one night, right? So that's what Rava says. So Rava really enjoyed his Purim celebration and took it to its extreme and said, right, you should be blitzed out so hard. That's not really a word, is it? But you drink so much that you don't know the difference between good and evil anymore. You don't know the difference between cursed be Haman and blessed be Mordechai. So that's pretty drunk, right? However, here's the warning. Rabbah and Rabbi Zera once held a Purim party together and got very drunk. Right? They did exactly what Rava wanted them to do. In his stupor, Rabbah killed Rabbi Zera. he lost control of himself and lopped his head off with a sword. The next day, Rabbah prayed for mercy and revived Rabbi Zera. And somehow, by some miracle, the next day, he sobered up, saw what happened, prayed for mercy, and a miracle happened. And Rabbi Zera became decapitated once again and survived. I don't think this is probably not historically accurate story. But the Talmud records it as fact. They took their obligation to drink seriously, and tragedy struck. But luckily, because it was Purim or something, some extra spirit helped save them, and Rabbi Zera survived somehow. The next year, Rabbah said to Rabbi Zera, "Come, Purim's about to happen again. Let us make another Purim party." Rabbi Zera responded, "A miracle does not happen every day." And say, "No, thank you. I'm not coming to your Purim party anymore. I can't rely on a miracle once again this year. Miracles only happen once in a lifetime. So no, thank you. I'm going to skip your Purim party this year." And so the legend of the Talmud teaches us about moderation. Yes, it's important to let loose on Purim. It's important to put yourself into an environment of joy and maybe excess in order to elicit some of these expressions that have been submerged all year round, to let go a little bit, but in moderation. So there you go. So that's our Purim celebration. I think the two important things there are the balance of priority between taking care of our own needs and experiencing our own Purim, and making sure that the people around us are experiencing that joy as well. We do that through sending people presents or gifts. We do that through just dropping off food on, for people who need it. So we need to make sure that our whole community is celebrating Purim with us when we celebrate Purim. And then, of course, the idea of moderation and unmasking, right? So putting on a mask in order to allow ourselves to be a little bit more free. And we can do the same thing with Hanukkah. We can analyze Hanukkah and see, how we can help, how it can help us in our lives. So here's 10 ways to mark the Jewish year, right? So here's 10 suggestions from chapter 4 on how to really engage in the calendar year. The Passover Seders, of course, all right, our magnificent opus of collection of rabbinic material and conversations. Build a sukkah and get outside, attend synagogue for the high holidays, attending a Shavuot program, making Shabbat a regular part of your life. Tisha B'Av is in the summer, and it's an important historical memory. Go wild on Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah comes in the fall, and to dance with the Torahs at the end of Sukkot, light Hanukkah candles, give mishloach manot on Purim. It's like trick or treat in reverse. On Purim, we reach out to those who stand with us through thick and thin with gifts of love and chocolate, right? Instead of asking people for candy, we give people candy, which, that's fine. Both ways are fine, but I like ours better. Host celebrations in your home, right? And soon, we're going to be able to gather both in our homes and in our synagogues. And that's an especially poignant way of celebrating holidays is together as a community. It works much better in a community than alone. All right, so now time for our reflections on chapter 4. They're suggesting I most strongly identify with the holiday of blank because, right, it allows me to do this or that. So think about that for a minute, and maybe we'll share identifying with one of the holidays. And then I haven't observed blank, but after this class, I'm intrigued too, because, right, and there you go. Additional readings. Michael Strassfeld has a beautiful book called The Jewish Holidays, an introduction to the religious practices of the high holidays, the Jewish way of living. Paul Steinberg is a friend of mine who has 3 volumes on celebrating the Jewish year. And there's all kinds of sort of guides and easy manuals that you can find on the internet, including My Jewish Learning and HeebCal, which gives you the Jewish calendar. If you really want to know more about the upcoming holidays and the timing and things like that, Hebcal, hebcal.com. Good. So let's open it up for, well, first of all, let's reflect on a holiday that's meaningful for you. I'll start, and then I'll ask you to, if you feel like sharing. A holiday that, I'll go back to here. Let's go back to the wheel for a second, actually. Yeah. So first of all, let's identify the 3 festivals on the wheel. All right. So here's Sukkot, starts in Tishrei. And then Pesach comes here in Nisan. Right? And then Shavuot comes here in Sivan. Right? Those are the 3 pilgrimage festivals. Shalosh Regalim are Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot. Right? And then we have the high holidays and Shabbat, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and Shabbat is all year round. And then we've got the commemorations of historical events, right, which are Hanukkah and Purim, most poignantly. And then all these about Israel and Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut and Tisha B'Av. Okay, so there are different categories of holidays, the 3 festivals, holidays of reflection, and historical commemorations. Purim is historical commemoration. Ken Levine is taking some courses in his professional life. And one of them is about the historicity of the Purim story. Did it really happen? It's Oliver's question, about the Torah and the 6 days of creation, and because of that theological question. But the same can be asked about the story of Purim. One interesting thing about the story of Purim is it's a story about happenstance. People happen to be in the right place at the right time to overhear that conversation and then take it there. And just at the right time, he slips into there and they slip into there together. It's a story about happenstance and coincidence. And I think the message is that right behind all of these coincidences, behind all of these meetings that we have in our lives, right, there's a divine mystery. I'm not going to say a plan, but a divine mystery that enables us to meet the people we need to meet at the right time and to be in the right place. Right? That maybe there are no coincidences in life, that we're here for a purpose and a reason. And we just have to see things in the right light. Maybe Purim can help us with our vision and expand our vision. So that's kind of the spirit of Purim, and that's the holiday I'll connect to most poignantly today. That's my answer, is Purim. Because first of all, it's coming up next. That's my favorite. But secondly, it highlights the joy potential in Judaism, which I like. It's important to me. Right. Typically, I try real hard to make Judaism palatable and ethical and joyful. But on Purim, it's easy. It's all just a celebration for the most part. Right? And there's some darkness to it. But today, we raise up the joy of Purim. Does anybody have any holidays that are meaningful and why?
Just a comment. I didn't imply that they didn't happen. I was just saying. I never implied that they didn't happen. It was just a question.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm expanding your.
I didn't imply anything that it didn't happen.
No, I'm not. I would never accuse you of being a heretic.
Yes. Okay. But
the heresy here comes from the world of scholarship, right? Which I appreciate.
Yes, but Cantor Levine did another class, and he did tell us the story about Purim, and he implied that it probably didn't happen.
Yes, that's.
And then he also told us the story of Hanukkah, and he told us that it was a military conquest, and that years later they made they turned it into a spiritual event.
Right. Evolved later into a spiritual event because of the discomfort with the military.
And that the story of the 8 days and the miracle of the candles and everything came like a couple of 100 years later or something of that nature.
Right, right.
But anyway, but in answer to your question, my favorite holiday has always been Passover, because it's like most people's, I guess, because it's the whole family getting together at the house and everything. So that's always been my favorite.
Yeah, it's home-based, and it's
Home-based and
we love that.
very meaningful.
Yeah, beautiful. Others, yeah.
And for me as well, you know, it's the family gathering and the traditions that we shared. You know, the first night was matzo balls, the second night is borscht, you know, all those kinds of things. And I once had, my grandfather believed, my Zeta believed it was a long trip out of Israel, right? I mean, out of Egypt. So we had a long, noisy Seder. I had some Reform Jewish friends once come, and they were appalled because we were loud and we were joyous and we carried on, and I was the only one that didn't eat pork. So they were sure that my Seder would be very stern and strict, and
How interesting.
no, not at all.
Right, that the true, authentic spirit of Judaism and Passover are joyful and raucous.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
loud as you knock the wine over and yell at the kids, and yeah.
Right, and it's home, so it's casual. I think that's right.
Right.
Good. So that answers. I was going to ask, what's the significance of the? I mean, I understand that there's traditions that are important and comfortable, but I'm assuming it goes beyond that. That it's not just following the traditions. I guess my question is, what's meaningful about the tradition? Why is that a meaningful experience to eat the same thing every year? It doesn't seem like it'd be that significant, but why is it so significant?
You know, all holidays, it's those traditions that tie you together. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a family that uses red plates on a birthday, or I don't know, but those are the things that bind us together.
Thank you. Yeah, that historical memory,
right,
and consciousness, right, and looking at another person across the table and knowing that they share all of the memories and experiences with you is irreplaceable. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily holiday related, but I got this planner this year from Gold Herring, and it has the weeks are set up like a wheel, but it has both the secular and Hebrew calendars included, and there's journal entries for every month. So it's been really helpful for me to kind of learn to connect with the Hebrew calendar and have some reflection at the beginning of every month. But yeah, it's Gold Herring. You can get a hard copy or digital, and it's been really, really neat to kind of explore the calendar more and time.
Yeah, right. So you have to talk about that. Yeah. But when you're looking at a page, it shows you a week in a circle.
Yeah. Here, let me see if I can find. So the month is set up vertically, and it has both calendars listed, and it's just kind of like this. And then there's journal questions at the beginning of every month. So you can journal, and there's a little educational piece, I guess, for each month as well. And then for the weeks, it is a wheel, and it shows you the week as a circle. And there's Torah portion for each week, and space for journaling. It's kind of challenging to actually use it for planning because of how it is set up, but it is a good journaling tool. So
yeah, it's probably its intent is to help you wrap your brain around, well, to show time in a different way as a wheel. A week is a unit of time to yours to do something with. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think one of the important things that raises is that we're traveling through time together, right? And I think that picks up on the idea that Rosalind's bringing is the togetherness. Is that the Jewish people are traveling through time together, and there are certain energies built into different times of year. Some are just natural agricultural, like in the spring, we're feeling refreshed, and in the winter, we're feeling down, right? Some of them are natural and universal, and some of them are specific and historical, right? The moment that we were released out of Egypt, right? We can still feel that, right? And that energy is present. I think that's one of the challenges that we have, is to understand that time isn't neutral in Judaism. Time has flavor. Time has, that's the best way I can put it. Time has flavor. There's a energy that's built into time. So not only, right, so on Shabbat, the belief we believe that not only is it holy because we're making it holy, but also there's something supernaturally holy about it. There's something built into the fabric of the universe, of the air, of the cosmos that's already holy. And so our job is to pick up on the holiness, to receive that like a FM receiver, right? That we hold up, and we want to receive the energy that's built into our history, built into our DNA, built into our legacy, built into the Jewish calendar. And so this is the energy, right? Right now, we're approaching Purim, and this is the energy of topsy-turvy. This is the energy of out of the box, right? This is the energy, it's time to raise those things that we've been submerging. And so that energy is out there. And the question is, are we going to be able to pick, how much of it are we going to pick up this year? And so it's a different way to conceive of time, that we don't, it's not a blank slate for us to do with it as we wish. There's actually energy built into that, to the calendar. And that's true, I think, for the year-long calendar, and it's also true during the day. Right? We can experience ourselves. The morning has certain quality to it. Dusk and dawn have certain supernatural quality. Supernatural, is that the right word? It's cosmic, I don't know what word to use. Spiritual qualities to them that exist, that are real. And our job is to be attuned to what they are. And if we are able to attune ourselves in the right time, in the right place, to the right energy, that's when the magic happens. That's when we can really open the doors and allow God to function fully in our lives, is if we're open to the energy at the time when the energy's poignant and present, and that coupling of tradition and ancestry with present tense and hopeful future can be is where the religious experience is at. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to take the calendar experience, and that's Ken Levine's job. He got mentioned, he got a shout out today, is to deepen, right? He teaches the religious school, and that's at a pediatric level, which is appropriate, but pediatrics are not appropriate for adults. And so that's our adult education job. And hopefully what we did today is just give a little bit of a taste of the depth that's available through the Jewish calendar. And so let's stop here for now. Thank you for engaging in this exercise. So next week we'll focus more on Shabbat and understand the energy of Shabbat, the spirit of Shabbat, and how we can integrate its principles more deeply into our lives. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yay.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And soon we'll meet in person. We'll figure that out soon.
God willing. Yes. Looking forward to that.
We're feeling more hopeful every day.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll see you
Thank you.
soon.
Have a good week.
Thank you too.